If you want to use that, you probably want to leverage something like Amazon EMR, which is our managed to-do cluster. So with a click of a button, you get Spark or R running, for example, and bootstrapped into a cluster. A fully managed machine learning service. I'm going to go into more detail around that later, on how that can be used. Then data warehouses are also fairly relevant. When it comes to data analytics, often you still want to write a SQL query, because sometimes a SQL query is just a great way to kind of get some aggregation on data. If you want to aggregate data using SQL, you probably want to tap onto a data warehouse like Redshift, for example. Services like Data Pipeline can do your ETL process. If you're not familiar with ETL, stands for extract, transform, load. It's basically just a fancy word of saying, take data here and put it somewhere else and transform it. That's what it means. And then compute services. So this is if you want to run your own compute, we got virtual service, which is EC2. And then we also got a newer service, and I'm going to demonstrate that one later, which is called Lambda, which is an event-driven compute service. And then after that, you can visualize your information. So here, I just showed open source tools here like Pento, Kibana, D3, but there are tons of tools out there. And as a matter of fact, one other thing that I wanted to point out is the AWS marketplace. This is fairly interesting when it comes to data analytics. Going back to the idea of it's experimental, you try something out. What if I could do that with software? I want to try Revolutionary, I want to try this new tool, right? AWS Marketplace allows you to do exactly this. So we work with software vendors together here, and with a click of a button you can launch their software into our virtual service, and we charge you an hourly license fee, which is great, because if you want to try out a piece of software, instead of procuring a license for a few $1,000s a year, you can now try it out and say, I tried for 1 hour, play around with it, maybe it's good for me, then I use it all the time, or I stop using it, and then it maybe cost me like a few cents just to try out the software. So we get lots of visualization tools like Tableau, Microsoft BI, MicroStrategy in our marketplace, where you just say, I want to run Microsoft, sorry, it has been renamed. It's Typical Spotfire is the new project. This is the newest one. Typical Spotfire, I want to run Typical Spotfire, click of a button, runs for you, you run it for an hour, you would pay only for that hour in terms of infrastructure, but also the software license. So that's fairly interesting if you want to play around with some tools. All right, so I'm just not going to go through everything, just want to address a few. And the first one, I'm quite fancying a log ingestion tool called Fluentd. If you don't know about it, great tool, check it out. It's open source, so it's on GitHub, github.com/fluent/fluentd. And it's basically a data collector, which is very nice to use for log rotation. Very often you store a lot of log information or a lot of data somewhere, but you kind of want to move it to a central place. Now don't go and create cron jobs to do that, because I see that all the time. That's not very scalable and manageable way to do it. Use a tool like Fluentd, for example. It actually gets integration into many different data sources where it can load from. So things like syslogs, application logs, even Twitter, for example, can be a data source. And then you can push it to another place, and here we have integration into our services. So for example, you can push straight into Amazon S3, our simple storage service, or straight into Amazon Kinesis, which is our real-time data processing stream. How would you do that? Well, Fluentd does it all for you after you installed it. You just need to configure it. Here you see an example. This would be if I want to rotate my Apache 2 or Apache access log files here, and I want to push them into Amazon S3, it's as simple as just saying match S3 and put it in my S3 bucket, which I called my web logs. Now Fluentd will automatically look at what new logs are coming in, and from Apache access logs, push them out into your S3 bucket, where you can now pick it up from your data analytics platform. This is a great way if you have many different servers, for example, out there, and you just want to move log files somewhere. This tool can help you do that, and a bunch of other things, of course. Now, I mentioned integration also into Amazon Kinesis. What is Amazon Kinesis? I mentioned it's real-time data processing stream. Let's dissect that a little bit further. It's a service that has managed distributed stream where you can throw in a payload of data, different events that are coming in, and then you can react upon those events in real time, right? As they come in, you can pick them up and do something with it. We manage the scalability aspect of it, so highly available, fully scalable, and we achieve that by also replicating your data across at least always 3 different facilities, data center facilities. So when it goes into a stream, it goes into at least 3 different data centers within the region of your choice though. So if you say I want to do that in Tokyo, it's not going to leave Tokyo. I wanted to give you an example because it's always a bit dry to just kind of say this is a service that's highly available and it does all that for you. Could that be used? Anybody knows Clash of Clans here? It's a little game, very popular. Yeah, it's from a Finnish game developer called Supercell, and it's about these little clans that run around. You can have your little villages and loot each other villages and build up your clan. They are fully powered on AWS, and they have been extremely popular. I think they've been #1 in the App Store in different countries for over 2 years now, which is crazy if you think about that. How do they achieve that? They're very heavy on the analytics side. They understand their user extremely well, and it allows them to kind of keep them on the platform. If you think about a game, the most important part is user retention. If your user stays on your game and keeps on playing it, that's where you drive the revenue out of it. User acquisition is obviously another interesting part, but if you retain the user that you already have, you don't need to invest so much into acquisition. That's exactly what Clash of Clans is doing. So what they do is within the game, whatever you do, you select your characters, your clan, you move around, all the events that you do, they send them back into a Kinesis stream in AWS to process it in real time. But before they process it in real time, what they do, they plug a variety of applications behind it. The first application that they plug behind it is just store those information into an S3 bucket. To give you an idea, this is the amount of data that they collect every day. Just the in-game events create about 4 terabytes of data every single day, just on what people are doing within the app. Now, what they do with that data is they actually take that back into their data scientist team, and they try to find patterns to determine likelihood of user churn. So they found out that if you do certain things within the game, you're more likely to actually stop playing the game or continue playing the game. These can be simple things. Think about playtime, that's a simple one. But they found that even patterns within the behavior of your character can give them a relatively accurate prediction of he's very likely to stop playing the game within the next hour because he seems bored with it. And what they do is they use that information to use that model in their Kinesis stream, and for the influx of events, they continuously calculate the churn likelihood of that individual user. If he's likely to stop playing the game, to leave the platform, what they do is they send back a mobile push notification to the player to give him a free new goodie within the game. It's like a free new character, a free new sword, a free new item, for example. And what does happen? Well, if you play the game, you get bored and you go, oh, I got something free. Well, that's cool. I keep on playing, right? And it works. It's impressive. I never thought it would have that much of impact, but Clash of Clans is a perfect example of if you use your analytics wisely, you can actually drive a lot of your revenue, especially when it comes to the gaming industry. So a good example of where real-time data processing is relevant. They would get that insight without a real-time data processing stream, but they can't react upon it. If you react upon it a week later and I send you an email, hey, I got a free new goodie for it and I already removed the game, I'm not gonna download it anymore. So it's important to react in real time. So how do we talk to Kinesis? Well, a bunch of ways. So remember, everything is a RESTful API, so we can obviously do an HTTP post if we want to talk to Kinesis. That's the simplest way. But to make it a little bit easier, we obviously got the software development kits. The open source tools that I mentioned, like Log4j, Flume, Fluentd, all of those also have direct integration into Kinesis, so they just connect it to it and it sends its event to Kinesis. Also for Taiwan here, an interesting thing is you get lots of chipset manufacturers, and right now one of the newest trends is what is referred to Internet of Things, IoT. MediaTek is pretty big in that, for example. Kinesis is a great way, if you produce IoT devices, to also stream in information. So we also get a specific Kinesis producer library for IoT devices, and that is written in the wonderful programming language of C, without the pluses. So, because we talk IoT. But we get a bunch of different SDKs, so if you go into that space, quite interesting. After you put it in the stream, this is where the real-time data processing stream is interesting, because you could argue, I could just create a queue. If I have a queuing system, then I can do all that. Not really, because what you can't do in a queue is to have multiple applications working on the same queue without duplicating that data. A real-time data processing stream can do that for you. So you can say, I plug, for example, 4 different applications behind it. One application does nothing else but to store it somewhere else for later use. Maybe do some simple aggregation, push it in a storage place, like an S3 bucket. Another one could be just look at what happened over the past 1 minute, put it in a dashboard. This could be a NoSQL database like DynamoDB to kind of visualize what's going on. Another one would be a decision-making tree. This is what Clash of Clans does. Decision-making tree, or any kind of pre-computed model that you use to kind of get a hold of it and make a decision. And obviously feed your machine learning algorithm with it. Now, important to know is those can all work independently on the same amount of data that comes in. This stream here keeps the data stored securely for 24 hours. So even if your application drags a little bit behind, is a little bit slow, you can pick up again from where it is. And all of them work independently on their own data horizon, on where they are, the position, basically, in that stream. So that's great. We can put multiple applications behind it. By the way, I want to point you to what we call AWS Labs. So we get a bunch of teams that work on some open source connectors and tools specifically to use with AWS, such as Kinesis. We got a bunch of connectors there. All of those are licensed under Apache license 2.0.